is 9/11 Freefall.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of 9/11 Freefall. I am your host, Andy Steele. Tonight, the guest is Ted Walter. He is back. He's talking about the latest exciting project being undertaken by AE 9/11 Truth. It's going to be a book that's coming out in September, a comprehensive guide. Basically putting all of the information in one place, something that our supporters can educate themselves with, educate others, spread around, help to spread the message. So we'll be talking about that. The name of the book is Beyond Misinformation, What Science Says About the Destruction of World Trade Center Buildings 1, 2, and 7. And we'll be saying how you can help out. One way that you can help out, you can go to ae911truth.org right now. Go to the AE 9/11 Truth news section under articles and events on that webpage and check the story out about this book. And within the text of that story, there's a donation button. You know, your donation goes a long way, not just towards printing the book, but also in circulating it, because after this book is printed, it's going to be going to some influential people within our society, influential people within the architectural and engineering profession too. So we're going to be getting it out there, and you can also get a copy of the book by donating $30, an early copy. So you can have the first edition of it. And at some point, too, they'll be available in bulk, so you can spread them around, get them where they need to be, get them in the hands of your neighbor, of your family, of that guy who, may be somewhat familiar with this issue but hasn't thought about it much. Of course, this is the kind of activism that we need to be doing. Activism that takes place in that wild west of the real world, out of the digital world, in that place where the government can't monitor our conversations or know every website that we visit. This is where activism happens. This is where they're afraid of us dwelling. So we need to bring it to the streets as much as we brought it to the social media. So go to ae911truth.org, donate whatever you can, and check it out. And in September, get yourself a copy of that book. All right, I'm going to play that interview in about 10 minutes or so. I wanted to go over an article that I really haven't had a chance to go over on this show because our interviews have run so long. I finally got an opportunity to do it this week. The title of the article is Architecture and Engineering Faculties of 5 Major Universities Receive Explosive 9/11 Evidence. And you'll notice there's a quote up there by yours truly. And I'm just going to go over this article as I read it to you. Begins, massive mailing effort undertaken after campus newspapers refused to run AE 9/11 Truth insert. More than 1,200 packets containing the research papers of experts on the evidence for the controlled demolition of the World Trade Center were mailed to the architectural and engineering faculties of 4 Ivy League schools and a quote-unquote public Ivy University in a massive outreach campaign last winter, according to AE 9/11 Truth Public Relations Manager Andy Steele, who spearheaded the effort. Thanks to a grant from a generous AE 9/11 Truth donor, every architecture and engineering professor at Cornell University, Dartmouth College, Harvard University, Yale University, and the University of Virginia received a packet that included a personal cover letter from AE 9/11 Truth founder Richard Gage, an introductory article about AE 9/11 Truth, an article quoting structural engineers who make the case for controlled demolition, a DVD of the documentary 9/11 Explosive Evidence Experts Speak Out, and a CD filled with other pertinent videos and peer-reviewed papers by 9/11 Truth movement scholars. So the packets had a lot of stuff in them, folks. Originally, Steele attempted to reach out to the faculty and students of all departments of these institutions through inserts in their student newspapers, but the editorial bodies of 3 out of 4 of the initially targeted universities denied that request. Steele added a 5th school, the University of Virginia, to the list after making the decision to send the packets. UVA was never contacted about running the inserts. So yeah, University of Virginia was added later after I had initially called these universities. and got their media packets, because there was a donor that wanted to reach out to these colleges, and that was the main intent. I was put on the task of doing this. So you call these universities student newspapers, which is the obvious logical choice for trying to get information to all of the students and to all the professors. And they send you a media kit. It's not just within the confines of the newspapers. They offer you things such as having your ad on the newspaper boxes, having them displayed in the cafeterias, having them on a particular billboard that a lot of students pass. They lay it out in their kits. So that's what you do if you ever want to do something like this. You ask for their media kit. You get it like a catalog. We decided to have inserts because we already had pamphlets made up that would make perfect inserts. And 2 of the colleges flat out said, no, we're not even going to deal with this. This is too controversial for us. It's too controversial in nature. But 2 of the colleges said yes, Harvard and Cornell. And in fact, Cornell did run the inserts to their credit. So I want to commend them for that. The other college, Harvard, did not in the end. What happened there? Well, let's go on in this article and find out. Only one of the universities, Cornell, allowed AE 9/11 Truth to publish its brochure in the campus paper, the Cornell Daily Sun. Initially, staff at the Harvard Crimson also agreed to run the inserts. They signed a contract with AE 9/11 Truth, which then created a brochure with the words paid advertisement printed on it to meet the Crimson's advertising guidelines. After the ad was approved by the Crimson, manufactured and mailed to the newspaper's offices for publication, the university reversed its position and broke the contract. According to Steele, a Crimson staff member emailed him explaining that their president had stepped in and overruled the contract. The email said, in part, while I may disagree, he, the president, cited that the content was too controversial of a message for us to display and felt that it might negatively impact the Crimson's brand. Unfortunately, it is a subjective matter in this case, and his opinion takes precedence. So the students and the staff of the Harvard Crimson said, okay, here's a contract, sign it. We signed it. They said, well, you got to have the words paid advertisement on it. We had the words paid advertisement printed on the brochures. We mailed them. And in the end, the president, and I'm not sure who this person's referring to as the president. He refers to the president as a he. I believe that the president of Harvard is a she. I don't really know who the president of Harvard is, so I don't know which president they're referring to. But somebody in quote-unquote authority stepped in and said, no, we cannot do this. We refuse to do this. And then ultimately, Harvard broke the contract, unfortunately. So the article goes on later. Realizing the tremendous pressure that these media gatekeepers were under, Steele decided to pursue a more direct outreach path. The most efficient means of outreach to any group is the kind that bypasses the institutional membranes that allow fear and politics to guide their actions, said Steele. Anytime you can take the censors out of the equation and speak directly to the people you want to reach, the more control you have over the situation and the stronger the impact of your message will be. And that's right. I stand by that here several weeks afterwards. My opinion hasn't changed. You need to get around the censors. All right. There are people whose job is to keep real issues from reaching the ears and eyes of their public that they manage, that they handle. I think it's pretty much passé to point out at this point that the media, corporate media, the establishment institutions such as Ivy League schools and their newspapers aren't really in the business of helping people, aren't really in the business of informing people. They're in the business of handling people, of ushering them from one stage of the system to another. All right, and there are people designed to keep people like you and me out, people who talk about, physics and common sense. So you got to get around them. You got to stop relying on them. You got to stop asking for their permission to make your case. You just need to make it. All right, get on talk radio any way that you can and bring the issue to whatever host of whatever program you're speaking to. Talk directly to people on the street. I wasn't kidding earlier when I said that we need to get out of the matrix of the computer age, where everything we do can be tracked and where search algorithms can be manipulated so that certain information doesn't reach a lot of people. All right, have those one-on-one conversations. It's not going to kill you to put down your iPhone and talk to somebody. All right, you need to do it. This is where activism needs to go. It needs to go back to its roots. Just as a side note at the end of this article, it says, one professor who teaches neither architecture nor engineering was included in the outreach effort. Steele and the donor realized that Philip Zelikow, who was executive director of the 9/11 Commission, who now teaches history at the University of Virginia, might be interested in peering through some of the holes that the commission left in its much criticized final narrative. So Philip Zelikow got one. I don't know. I didn't get any response from Philip Zelikow, but you'd think he'd be interested in knowing more about this. I mean, members of the 9/11 Commission have admitted that it was essentially like a first draft of history. And that's true. That's true with any event in world history. I mean, they still study the Titanic going down. They still look into the causes of that. I don't think there's really any doubt about what caused the Titanic to sink, but they still study it. They still study the Maine, the explosion of the Maine that was used as a propaganda event to get us into war with Spain, and found out that the originally stated causes of that explosion, I believe it was a landmine in the harbor set by Spain, ended up being a bunch of bunk, that it was likely a boiler explosion or something like that. But the official story of that's been disproved somewhere over 100 years after the event happened. Now, I'm not patient. I don't want to wait that long. I don't want to wait till I'm sitting in a rest home in a wheelchair and focusing on the arduous task of putting my slippers on and have some nurse walk in and say, Mr. Steele, they acknowledge that Building 7 was likely a controlled demolition today. And I kind of lift my head and say, oh, that's good. I'm not up for that. All right, I want my acknowledgement now. I want them to come face to face with justice, the true perpetrators of this crime, whoever they may be. And I know this audience wants that too. So that is why we need to do more actions like this. Don't wait for permission from headquarters. Don't wallow in these excuses of low self-esteem or I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, I didn't know what I was doing when I first got started. You try things, you learn, you develop it. This is how you become better at stuff, all right, just by experience. So don't wait. Come up with ideas. Come up with new ways to get the info to as many people as you can. And, of course, we're going to be providing you with a great tool this September, Beyond Misinformation, the book that's going to summarize the evidence in easy-to-read format for people to pass around and educate the American public about the real evidence for the controlled demolitions. So there's no excuse anymore. We got to get on it, folks. All right, before I play my interview with Ted Walter, we're going to do what we do every week. We're going to take 10 seconds of silence to remember the victims of 9/11 and their families and all the people who died in the wars that followed 9/11. We're going to do that beginning now. And that is 10 seconds. Ted Walter is a public policy analyst by trade, as well as being the director of strategy and development for architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth. He was the director of NYC Can's High-Rise Safety Initiative and the campaign manager for AE 9/11 Truth's Rethink 9/11 campaign. He's helping to spearhead an effort to create a new book for AE 9/11 Truth called Beyond Misinformation. He's going to be talking about it on today's show. Ted, welcome back to 9/11 Freefall.
Thanks for having me, Andy.
I enjoy having you on, and so many of the projects that you come up with have such a tremendous impact, make so many waves, not just in the 9/11 Truth movement, but in the greater society too, just in terms of what you did with AIA, what you did with High-Rise Safety Initiative, and keeping the issue in the minds and in the hearts of the American people, getting the press to cover it. And I feel that this next project that you're spearheading is going to make tremendous waves too. We talked about it just now in the intro, but it's called Beyond Misinformation. So what is Beyond Misinformation? What is it going to be about?
Beyond Misinformation, and the subtitle of the booklet is What Science Says About the Destruction of World Trade Center Buildings 1, 2, and 7. It's a booklet that AE, Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, is in the process of writing, and we will be releasing around the anniversary of 9/11 this coming September. It's going to be AE 9/11 Truth's first comprehensive guide to all of the most important evidence regarding the destruction of the World Trade Center, Twin Towers, and Building 7. So, AE 9/11 Truth has been in existence for about 8 or 9 years, and over the years, we have put out a number of very influential and effective educational materials. Most notably, 9/11 Explosive Evidence Experts Speak Out, which is a 2-hour film that includes around 40 experts, ranging from architects to structural engineers to physicists, chemists, demolition experts. We put out that video about 3 or 4 years ago. Also, 9/11 Blueprint for Truth is another video. It's a video of Richard Gage's presentation and some shorter videos. And then also, we put out a number of articles and various educational flyers and brochures, et cetera. We did an assessment of our educational materials recently, and determined that we had a need for a sort of comprehensive written document that essentially introduces, in particular, newcomers to all the World Trade Center evidence in a written format. And so that's really what the purpose of this booklet is to provide an overview of the evidence regarding the destruction of the World Trade Center. But also, it will serve other purposes too. We anticipate in the long run that hundreds of thousands of people who are new to the evidence will read this booklet, will find it prominently featured on our website and be able to download it. But also, it will serve as sort of a resource for 9/11 advocates, to brush up on their knowledge of the evidence. It'll also carefully document the official investigations that were conducted, first by FEMA and then by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, Nist. And we think at AE 9/11 Truth that it's very important to understand how those investigations were conducted and what is the actual collapse mechanism, the failure mode that those investigations put forth. And it's important for all folks, whether you know nothing about it at this point or if you have been active around 9/11 for years, to have a detailed understanding of what today the National Institute of Standards and Technology says about why the towers and Building 7 came down. So that's the gist of it. And we will, as I said, be releasing it this September. And as part of the release of this booklet, we are in the process now of fundraising so that we can mail the booklet out to 20,000 architects and engineers across the country. And that will happen in the second week of September, around the anniversary of 9/11. And thus far, as of July 7th, July 8th, we are more than halfway there in terms of the funds that we need to raise to mail the booklet to 20,000 architects and engineers. Our goal is to raise $50,000 by July 15th, and as of July 7th, we're at about $27,000. So we're more than halfway there.
Well, we got some great supporters who are always rise to the occasion. I have no doubt that we're going to meet that goal. You mentioned that we don't really have a book like this. That's something that occurred to me when when this was first brought up, and I saw the bulletin that went out. We don't have a book, but why do we need a book? I mean, why can't we give people Experts Speak Out and Blueprint for Truth? Why do we have to have it in written form?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's important to speak to people in all mediums. There are some people that are going to be more drawn to watching experts speak out, the 2-hour documentary. There are also shorter versions of that. But a lot of people, myself included, when I first started researching 9/11, I tended to gravitate towards the written materials. I read many papers. I looked at the Nist report the Nist report on the towers, which at that time had been issued, and whatever I could get my hands on. Basically, I read everything I could find, and I know that today as a 9/11 advocate, I find that there's so many things that when you first start talking to somebody about 9/11, you want to send them all these different papers. You send them links to several different videos. There doesn't exist one document, in my view, and one easy to read document, not a 200-page book, but, a more simple document that really provides an overview of all of the evidence. And so that's the goal of this booklet. And it's important to provide it not just in a video format, but in a written format, but in something that's more lengthy than just a flyer that you hand out on the street.
What benefit to the 9/11 truth movement, not just within AE and 9/11 Science Truth, but just your general rank-and-file person who's aware that there's an issue with the official story, whether it be the building demolitions or other parts of it, what benefit do you feel that this book is going to contribute to the movement as a whole?
Well, I think the first thing which I've touched on a little bit is that it's going to be that document that you can just point to, that you can email somebody the PDF of, that provides the comprehensive overview in a very sort of neutral tone and easy to read format with nice pictures, nice tables. So it's going to be, I hope, a tremendously valuable educational tool. Beyond that, as I spoke to a little bit before, I think there will be information in there that is helpful and educational to people already involved in 9/11 activism. One thing that we touched on was that a lot of folks don't have an extremely detailed knowledge of the official explanation of the collapse of the towers in Building 7. It would be great for more 9/11 advocates to have a detailed understanding of that. Just to have, sort of a distillation of what the best evidence is. There's so much out there, and then a certain percentage of that is evidence that has been extensively, exhaustively studied, written about. That's the kind of material that is going to be featured in the booklet, and so it will sort of be a guide in general for 9/11 advocates as to what is the best evidence, and maybe what are the arguments that are maybe possible, but maybe more speculative or not as supported by all of the evidence. So it'll be useful in that regard as well.
And a lot of this, diving into some of these reports might go into realms that are beyond people's knowledge, or just the jargon might be beyond their understanding of what they've studied, because they haven't studied engineering. So what are some of the things is going to benefit people who read this book who may not know about engineering? How is it going to be written for the general public?
As far as the, let's say focusing on the collapse of World Trade Center Building 7, we think it's important for not only 9/11 advocates, but all people to know precisely what the National Institute of Standards and Technology says caused the collapse of this building. We recently attended the National Convention of the American Institute of Architects, where we were advocating for the adoption of a resolution that many of our members had co-sponsored to be, that would essentially make it the official position of the American Institute of Architects to support a new investigation into the collapse of World Trade Center Building 7. And during the course of that, of the business meeting where our resolution was debated, a number of architects in the room stood up and said things that were, opposing our resolution and supporting the official explanation of the collapse, which were in fact erroneous descriptions of the official explanation. In one case, we had an architect from New York City who said that diesel fuel fires were responsible for the collapse of Building 7, which is a hypothesis that was discarded by the National Institute of Standards and Technology by 2008 when they issued their report on Building 7. We had another architect, who was, the regional director for one of the large regions of the American Institute of Architects, stand up and say that structural damage from the debris of the towers, of the North Tower, was part of the reason why Building 7 collapsed, or actually contributed to the collapse, when in fact NIST says that it didn't. It was actually the fires that were in the building by themselves, even without the structural damage, would have brought down the building. That same architect also claimed that there were extreme fires in Building 7. There was a raging inferno. And in fact, Nist says that the fires were well below the fires in terms of temperature. The temperature of those fires was well below the kind of fire temperatures that these buildings are built to withstand. And certainly if you look at the video and the photos, et cetera, the fires in Building 7 are relatively small compared to the types of fires that we've seen in high-rise buildings in the past. So our goal, in part, and this is for 9/11 advocates as well as for people that are new, for people, architects, members of the AIA, is to say, no, what you think that you know, which are ideas that have sort of been circulated over the years, a lot of that is misinformation. In fact, this is the official explanation of Building 7's collapse. And when you zoom out and look at all the evidence that Nist omitted, and you zoom in and look at the scant evidence that exists to support their theory of what happened, you can get a much more accurate understanding of why the likely cause of this building's collapse. Same goes for the towers, breaking down what in fact Nist says about the collapse of the building and the lack of evidence to support the explanation that Nist has given.
One of the best services that Nist has actually done for us, and I heard somebody describe it to me this way, and it's absolutely correct, is that they've actually debunked a lot of these early theories, a lot of them proposed by Nist themselves in the early stages. We'll overlook that at the moment. But they've debunked these theories that people believe they know about the World Trade Center 7's destruction, and have left us with this flimsy explanation that is easy for us to debunk. So what you're stating is right, and I've encountered this just doing my own work with AE 9/11 Truth. People who very certain of themselves, very arrogant, saying, I think you should do a little bit of research. It was diesel fuel that fed the fires, and that's why the building came down. Just go on to Snopes.com, as if that's a source. Whereas all those wacky conspiracy theorists that I cite from the National Institute of Standards and Technology themselves have said, no, it was not. It says so right in their FAQ. It says so right in their official reports. And I find a problem in that, you're talking about these architects who stood up at the AIA convention and said these things, talking with certainty, when in fact, they don't have their stories straight. And what do you do about that? Because people look to these folks as authorities. They look to them as somebody that should know. But it's very clear they haven't really researched it. I'm not even questioning their competence or their intelligence or their ability to understand it, but just their willingness to go up and state a story that even the government won't support. And the reason the government won't support these stories is because the evidence doesn't show that. Now, in my personal opinion, I think Nist would have no problem whatsoever keeping its mouth shut and allowing people to believe that diesel fuel fires brought down World Trade Center 7, or that there was a 10-story gouge, which was an early rumor that was floating around and Nist eventually had to back away from. activists in this modern day, people who care about science and common sense, who care about doing the right thing, have been forced to learn about engineering, forced to learn about architecture and learn about these concepts and figure out why Nist's explanation doesn't make any sense and figure out why Nist says that these early theories weren't correct. And I think what we're providing them at AE 9/11 Truth is going to be very helpful, because it's training your average person to have that knowledge. Knowledge is power. Having that weapon in their back pocket, and the book will probably be a little bit bigger, but they can roll it up probably and put it in their back pocket, or just to be able to hand it out and very easily reference this material and these arguments when debates come up, when they're talking maybe to an engineering professional. This is going to be something that is, I think, spread very wide and far, and a lot of people are going to be reading.
Absolutely. Our goal is that this, as an educational material will, really take off, and that, we're starting with the 20,000 architects and engineers across the country. In particular, we're going to be targeting every individual who worked on the Nist investigation, the FEMA building performance study, and also all the leadership, local and national, of the American Institute of Architects, the American Society of Civil Engineers. So we're starting with kind of the, quote unquote, the people that matter most, the thought leaders in these communities. We know that just on our website that probably in 1 year, a couple 100,000 people may come and download this document, just because it contains everything. It will be that comprehensive overview. We think it will be an educational resource of unprecedented value. What it will also do is point people towards all of that other research that has been done, all the papers that have been written. It'll be a springboard, a launching point for newcomers, and for those that want to dig deeper, we'll point them in all of the right directions so that they can. And the booklet actually states in the introduction that people are strongly encouraged, if they want to dig deeper and before reaching their own conclusions, to go and read, study the official reports, and also study all the other papers that are referenced in the booklet. It's a very useful signpost for what's all the best research that's out there that folks should be looking to get a deeper understanding.
Is there anything that you're looking to as inspiration for this book? Like how common is it for nonprofits? We're a very unique nonprofit with a very unique mission. Nobody knows that better than us. But how common is it for nonprofits to publish sort of a definitive book stating their position? Is this something unique we're doing? Do you look to any other people or organizations that have done this kind of thing as inspiration?
I think it's something that nonprofit organizations, particularly larger national nonprofit organizations, tend to do, maybe on a specific issue. There are reports that think tanks and research organizations, advocacy organizations put out on specific issues. Reports that are, very timely, maybe only relevant for a few years. There are, if you look around, you might find, say, from the ACLU, the ACLU's guide to such and such, to understanding this particular issue, such as like reproductive rights or other such issues. So it's certainly not unprecedented what we're doing, and there's perhaps a blueprint that we're following to some extent. But within the larger 9/11 Truth movement, AE 9/11 Truth we're not the only organization that we haven't only identified this gap in educational materials within our organization and the materials that we have put out in the past. We also believe that within the large 9/11 Truth movement, there's no document that exists quite like this that is providing an overview, a comprehensive overview of the World Trade Center evidence. There's other tremendous resources out there, such as the Journal of 9/11 Studies. There is the 9/11 Consensus Panel, which sort of brings together sort of the best evidence regarding various aspects of 9/11. But doesn't delve deeply, in particular, into the World Trade Center evidence. And there's many great websites which are repositories of articles and evidence, 9/11 Truth's own website. But we have not seen a document like this that's providing a comprehensive overview and introduction to the World Trade Center evidence specifically.
And the way that the internet has been sort of reformatted in recent years, a lot of the information is available, but it's available to people who are specifically looking for it. It's a lot harder to be able to place things on the internet so that people accidentally find it, like in the early days of YouTube when they would show you, what's getting the most views right now. They changed that now to what's hot or something like that, which is more subjective based on the editors there at YouTube. So, rather than being scattered, it's all in one place, and it's something that is available outside the realms of the internet. It's something that stands alone and separates itself from a lot of the silly misinformation, even from people arguing against the official story. There's a lot of silly ideas about what happened to the Twin Towers out there, too, and sometimes people might get confused and mix some of those things up. It separates it. It's within our own book. It's something that can be laying out on a coffee table, and if you have a relative or a guest over, they might pick it up and start reading it. It's something that can be passed around outside of the need for electronic communication. Someone can read it on a bus. Somebody can read it in a coffee shop if they don't have one of their little gadget phones that everybody has now. And there's a lot of people who still haven't adapted to that new trend in society where everybody's staring in their phones all day. So this is reaching a whole new audience. This is going to reach people who don't get on the internet very much. So, this is a great idea. This is something that I think maybe would have been created had 9/11 taken place back in the 80s instead of 2001 up front. But this is something that will spread, and I have no doubt a lot of people are going to be reading. So how is this going to differ from books written by, for instance, people like David Ray Griffin?
Well, to a large extent, we are following the lead of somebody like David Ray Griffin. If you take his book on the collapse of World Trade Center 7 as an example, the book is The Mysterious Collapse of World Trade Center 7, Why the Final Official Report About 9/11 is Unscientific and False. A lot of your listeners have read that book. The sort of intellectual framework of that book, which is to look at the Nist report on Building 7 and look at the ways in which the Nist investigation was not conducted in a scientific manner, to look at all of the evidence that Nist omitted or ignored, and then to also look what is the internal consistency of the Nist investigation. Does their explanation sort of on its own make sense? How much evidence is there for it? And asking the overall question of, was the Nist investigation a scientific investigation or not? That's the sort of intellectual framework that we're adopting to a certain extent. The title of the booklet, again, Beyond Misinformation, what science says about the destruction of World Trade Center buildings 1, 2, and 7. We're essentially trying to, in the course of a 50-page booklet, sort of emulate in a way the scientific process and say, okay, this is the data that exists regarding the collapse of these buildings. These are the two main hypotheses that have been put forth to explain the data. Which hypothesis out of these two is more consistent with the data that has been documented, and so that follows a lot in the footsteps of David Ray Griffin's work. It also follows in the footsteps of so many of the other researchers in the 9/11 truth community, who've been investigating this on their own for more than a decade, and we think this is sort of the most responsible way. And the most intuitive way to go about providing that overview of the evidence is through the lens of what is the data that exists and how consistent is each of these two competing hypotheses with that data. And so, yeah, as I said, David Ray Griffin's work is a huge inspiration and guide for us, as well as many of the other papers and articles that have been written over the years. There's not going to be a whole lot in this booklet that is, particularly new, especially for somebody who's very well versed in 9/11 research. The essence of what we're trying to do here is to package it in such a way that it'll spread far and wide, further than what our educational materials have done so far, even though we have had a good deal of success so far.
Now, I noticed like certain books throughout history, you sit down, you read Common Sense. It's more of a pamphlet than a book, but I have it in book form. It's on my shelf here. And you sit down and you read it, and it's in a narrative type of form and like an essay, and then it's done. But if I picked up a textbook, obviously there's going to be a different presentation given to me. There's going to be charts, bullet points. Things are going to be laid out in a slightly different way because that is designed to specifically educate. And people learn with things like those kinds of graphics I just described. What kind of tone is this book going to take? Is it going to be more like the straight essay form for 50 pages, or are there going to be graphics, charts, things like that?
Yeah, it's going to feel a little bit like a textbook, but not in terms of dryness. I would say I think that it will read very easy. There will be a lot of there will be tables. There will be definitely a lot of photos because much of the evidence is contained in photos. There may be some illustrations as well, highlighting different concepts. It's going to be something that sort of jumps off the page, is very easy to read and easy on the eye, and that's a big part of what we're when I said repackaging it in a way that it's maybe likely to spread further. We part of our challenge here is to create something that when we mail it to 20,000 architects and engineers across the country, they're not going to take one look at it and say, what is this rubbish, and throw it in the bin. We want people, on a visual, from a visual design standpoint, to look at it and be, just wowed by how it looks, and to open it up, just because it looks so professionally produced. And so that's a big part of it too. Stuff that looks nice is always, going to be more effective and at, keeping people's interest.
Well, and people are different kinds of learners too. Some people may be more visual, in which case, a nice graph or a picture will help drive the point home in their minds, whereas somebody may want to actually read a narrative paragraph and let it sink in for a little while. That's another advantage of books. Sometimes if I'm reading a book and somebody drives the point home with me, I'll sit and think about it for a few minutes before continuing on. I think a lot of times in movies, you're getting so much information so fast, you can lose information and have to watch it over and over again to pick up new things. But some people learn more from movies. That's the thing, is that we all have different ways of taking in information. I learned this when I was teaching, is that you usually teach the way that you yourself learn. And it sounds like from what you're saying here that this book is going to factor in most of the ways that people learn. And AE 9/11 Truth Overall is going to have all of those bases covered, because we have the movies, we're going to have the book now. We've got all the other educational material that we have been putting out. So this is just one more tool in the arsenal for people to use to spread this to the people who need to be hearing this information here 14 years later as we live in the post 9/11 world. Now, you've mentioned the architects and engineers that you want to send this info to, but just overall, beyond the initial mailing of this information out, as the book lives and breathes over the next year, 2 years, and is circulated, who else needs to read this book the most? What other people in our society do you wish or want to be picking this up and having this sink into their brains?
I think that there's a simple answer is you want everybody to read it. But, thinking about our target audience here, architects and engineers are one of the target audiences of our organization. We we remain totally committed to trying to generate reach a critical mass within the architecture and engineering communities, and accumulating more and more petition signers. And we don't know how the breakthrough is going to happen, but there's a possibility that if we have, if we continue to have success and our success accelerates within the architecture and engineering community, that it could spill over to the general public. But outside of that, I think that there's a significant percentage of the country, say that's relatively well educated, maybe 20 to 30%, who've sort of heard about the 9/11 truth movement, heard about the 9/11 conspiracy theories, call it whatever you will, who, maybe some of them dismiss it in their minds sort of in a very adamant way, but others sort of just probably don't think about it that much and just kind of make assumptions and, how could that be true? I think the first time I ever heard the theory that the Twin Towers were brought down by controlled demolition, to me it sounded kind of just didn't make sense, the first time I ever heard it. So there's a lot of those people out there that this booklet should really appeal to. It's being designed for those folks to, through the quality of its appearance and then the quality of its writing and the comprehensiveness and the sort of neutral tone, to really open up the minds of those folks and say, have them say, wow, I'm really surprised. I didn't think that there was anything here. But in fact, these people have a very strong argument that they're making, and the evidence seems to point very strongly in the direction of controlled demolition.
I think my quote was, wait, there's serious people who actually think this? I think that kind of epitomizes people's reaction when they start watching Blueprint for Truth or ESO, Experts Speak Out, or they just go to a Richard Gage's presentation because, unfortunately, the media has done a good job of trying to paint anybody that talks about this stuff as crazy. Now, we're doing a great job of countering that over the years. I think that a big part of this, obviously, is overcoming those mental barriers people have put up, but not even put up themselves, that they've had put in their brains by the general establishment machine that tells our media what to say, either through mass peer pressure or more direct means. I think that this is something that a congressman can read while on vacation somewhere in the privacy of their home, keep on their bookshelf or stashed in their desk, to enlighten themselves about this, free from any outside eyes or voices trying to sway them another way. Because this is how people get information. This is how people form opinions. They read something that argues one point, and then they read something that argues another point. Now, Nist has argued its point. It's been allowed to publish this volume explaining its story, and now we're publishing something that is countering that. This is how people arrive at truth. I think it's a great thing. It's a great idea. How are people, because I can already hear them getting excited about this, and I've heard some of the responses people have made to the Bulletin announcing this project. How are people going to be able to get a copy of this book eventually when it comes out?
Right now, as I said, we are fundraising so that we can mail it to 20,000 architects and engineers. Our fundraising goal in order to do that is to raise $50,000, and we're a little more than halfway there right now. And so what people are doing if they go and contribute, if you contribute $30 or more, which will allow us to mail this booklet to around 15 architects and engineers, just from that one contribution, you will also get a copy of the booklet in the mail this September. And so that alone right there is another way that we are spreading the information to more people. Not only are we mailing it to all these architects and engineers, we are also mailing it to all of our supporters who contribute so that they can spread the information in their communities with their friends and family. Once September rolls around, we are also going to make the booklet available online, and people will be able to purchase the booklet in bulk, so that and basically at cost, so that they can distribute the booklet themselves in their own communities, and many copies of the booklet. So it'll be prominently featured on our website as a PDF. Probably that's in the long run how probably the most people will read it. But it's really important to also get that hard copy in people's hands, and so that's why we're promoting this fundraising drive to mail it to 20,000 architects and engineers. And that's why we will, eventually be promoting sort of the bulk distribution of hard copies for people to hand out in their communities, and say to their local newspaper or to their local, obviously their congressperson, or to their local AIA chapter. The list goes on. Like I said, the DVD is a very, valuable tool, but having that hard copy written document that summarizes everything is the kind of information that a lot of people that maybe are not as likely to actually put a DVD in their DVD player and watch it. Okay, I'll pick up this booklet and read it for 10 minutes and see if it really captures my attention. So that's what we're hoping this booklet will do.
Yeah, and that's another thing too, is that there's an extra step in the process involved when you have to stick a DVD in. I mean, it allows people to be more passive. That's one advantage, because people tend to like that now. A lot of them do. But you got to actually go through that process of taking the DVD out, walking across your living room, remembering that you have the DVD. I know with me, sometimes people hand me DVDs. I put it on the desk, and then I put something else on top of it, and I might find it 5 months later and maybe watch it. But, a book, you just pick it up and start reading it. And Ted mentioned all of these different places that people can bring the book or present it to their congressman. You can bring it to your local library. Get it incorporated there if you buy them in bulk. You can bring it to your college. You can leave it out in commons areas on campus for people to pick up and read. You can go to your favorite coffee shop. There was a coffee shop in New York where I lived, where people who are very open to these kind of ideas go and share information, read poetry, play music, these kinds of things. Ask if you can leave it as the reading material on the big table where people sit and sip their coffee. I mean, you can spread this far and wide, and there is nothing that the electronic establishment, Big Brother of the internet, can do about it. All right, they can't limit your ability to open up a book and read it. They can't stop those interpersonal communications that happen outside of the digital world. All right, and I've said this before. I think this is what the other side is afraid of. I think they're afraid of us having those personal communications, afraid of us having these interactions that can't be kept track of, can't be diminished by playing with algorithms and keeping people from being able to see certain search results. All right, and also they don't know how many of these conversations are happening. They can't feel very safe that way. They can't feel very secure knowing that people are talking and they can't listen. People are reading this information and they can't jump in front of it and try to distract you away from it. So going back to our roots as people, Americans, pushing society forward, activists, doing things the old way through printed material, this is absolutely the way to go. I commend you, Ted, for doing that. How can people help us get attention to the book, generate publicity, create that buzz that's needed to help this thing go viral in the real world?
Well, yeah. Ordering in bulk many copies of the booklet, it's not so much a donation as just, covering the cost of producing the booklets, getting, 50 booklets to hand out in your local community. I think in the long run, we may end up being able to distribute hundreds of thousands of the booklet in that way. Just as a PDF, I mean, it'll be available as a PDF online, and you can email it to 100 of your friends. If you family members who, have always been on the fence, that you've been talking to about 9/11 for years, definitely send this to them. And yeah, just, when it comes out, doing what you can personally to spread the document, make sure it gets seen, and read by more people. And sort of just participating in the energy and the event of it being released this September in whatever way that you can.
And another thing you can do, too, if you got a PDF, you can pick out a page you like. Let's say there's a page that's got a lot of really good information, or maybe it's got a chart that really drives home the point that these were controlled demolitions. You go to the computer, you print out that one page 100 times, and you go and put it on a bulletin board on your campus or at the grocery store. You go put this here and there, so you can actually take your favorite page and make a flyer out of it, essentially. Just, leave it on park benches this way. That's another way you can spread the information, so people can just look at what's on that one particular page and let that sink in. Ted, I wanted to ask you you this. What's something you've learned in the course of this project?
Oh, I don't know. That's hard to say. You kind of learn lots of like little small things all the time, day by day, week by week as you go along, doing what you can for the cause. The outcome with the American Institute of Architects at the National Convention, having our petition signers sponsor that resolution calling upon the AIA to support a new investigation into the collapse of World Trade Center Building 7. That was an eye-opening experience. We went to the convention, spoke to several hundred architects at our booth. We probably spoke to over 1,000, but we spoke to several hundred who signed our statement of support and our petition. And then you go into the business meeting and, we got 4% of the vote. And we had architects standing up and stating totally erroneous things about the official explanation and, sort of shouting us down. And what we dealt with there was not only a sort of fear of, the psychological aspects of sort of accepting what the evidence tells us about what happened on 9/11, but just the fact of finding ways to actually literally just get the information in the hands of people is a major challenge. My guess is that of the 300 to 400 people that were in that room casting votes on behalf of their AIA chapters, whether or not to adopt this resolution, maybe 50 of them had taken a careful look at our materials, the materials that we emailed to them, that we mailed to them, that we were giving out at the convention, at our expo booth. And the other 300 or so probably just read the resolution and reacted based on how they felt about what they read in the resolution. So I think one of the challenges that we still face is literally how do we get the information in front of people? And that's why this is one of our major projects of the summer and of the anniversary, is to package the information in the most digestible document possible and mail it out to folks, and then just keep pushing and pushing and pushing to get this booklet in front of people, over the next year or two, because we face the sort of brick wall when it comes to just getting information in front of people. And this booklet is designed to overcome that.
Ted Walter, good luck with this, and we'll have you back on maybe afterwards to talk about the outcome of the mailing. But thank you so much for coming on 9/11 Freefall.
Thank you, Andy.
This program's on every Thursday night on No Lies Radio at 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific. You can also download MP3s of the show from the Internet Archive by going to 911freefall.com. This is Andy Steele saying have a great week and good luck.